In 1882, the electrical age began in Lower Manhattan. Thomas Edison fired up his Pearl Street station, sending commercial power to a few dozen customers within a 1-mile radius. The system ran on direct current, or DC. In a DC circuit, electrons flow continuously in a single, unchanging direction. To deliver this power, the Pearl Street generators output a steady 110 volts. That specific voltage was highly intentional. It provided exactly enough pressure to push electricity through the high-resistance carbon filaments of Edison's early incandescent light bulbs, keeping them glowing without instantly burning out. Within a few years, Edison held the critical patents for generation, distribution, and the bulbs themselves, securing an absolute monopoly over the young industry. He established the first global standard for electrical infrastructure. Yet the physical architecture of his system contained a critical flaw that threatened to halt its expansion entirely. A direct current generator outputs power at a fixed voltage. The 110 volts leaving Pearl Street Station could not be faltered or stepped up for transport. Because the voltage was low, the power struggled against the natural electrical resistance of the transmission wires over long distances. Joule heating shows power lost to heat equals the square of current multiplied by resistance. To transmit low-voltage power over distances, engineers had to drastically increase current. But the math is unforgiving. Doubling current doesn't double heat loss, it quadruples it. Pumping high current through standard wires generated enough heat to melt the lines and start fires. Edison's only solution was a brute force economic compromise. To lower the resistance, he had to increase the diameter of the wires. This required manufacturing massive, extremely thick cables made of highly expensive pure copper. Even with thick cables, the voltage drop was severe. A generating station could only service a 1-mile radius, meaning a city the size of New York would require hundreds of localized power plants. To connect microgrids to dense urban blocks, the infrastructure stacked vertically. Manhattan's sky became choked with thousands of heavy copper wires, weighing down utility poles. The problem was mathematical. Edison's expansion was bottlenecked by physical limits of copper and electrical resistance. In 1886, industrialist George Westinghouse recognized this transmission failure and invested in an alternative. He allied with a brilliant Serbian immigrant engineer named Nikola Tesla to commercialize a completely different electrical architecture. Instead of a steady, unidirectional flow, their system utilized alternating current, or AC. In an AC circuit, the flow of electrons rapidly reverses direction dozens of times per second, enabling the use of magnetic induction. This topological model demonstrates the missing component that AC enabled, the transformer. Instead of pushing high current, a transformer magnetically steps the voltage up to thousands of volts while dropping the current to a fraction of an amp. With the current reduced, Joule heating becomes negligible. The power can travel hundreds of miles from a single, highly efficient generating plant using incredibly thin, cheap copper wire. At the destination, a second transformer steps the high voltage back down to 110 volts, making it safe for indoor incandescent lighting. By decoupling transmission voltage from end-user voltage, AC solved the distance problem, rendering localized DC microgrids obsolete. Edison understood the physics perfectly. He knew his low-voltage system could not compete with the transmission efficiency of AC. Rather than license the rival technology, Edison attacked its core mechanism. He launched a public campaign claiming that the thousands of volts required for AC transmission posed an extreme, unmanageable lethal threat to the public. To maintain distance from the smear campaign, Edison secretly hired and funded Harold P. Brown, a shadowy electrical engineer, to act as an independent crusader. Brown began conducting a series of gruesome public demonstrations, staging them before reporters at Columbia College and Edison's own West Orange laboratory. He paid local children 25 cents for every stray dog or cat they could catch. Brown would strap the animals down and apply 330 volts of alternating current to kill them in front of horrified audiences. The objective of these demonstrations was entirely legislative. Brown and Edison lobbied politicians to legally tap all electrical transmission at a maximum of 300 volts, a limit that would make alternating current useless. The Edison faction transformed a debate over infrastructure efficiency into a propaganda war over life and death. The propaganda campaign escalated when New York State formed a commission to find a humane alternative to the executioner's noose. Despite publicly opposing capital punishment, Edison saw a strategic opportunity. Colluding with Thomson Houston, he and Brown built the first electric chair. They powered it with hidden Westinghouse AC generators, intending to forever brand AC as the executioner's current. On August 6, 1890, an axe murderer named William Kemmler was strapped in as the state's first test subject. The executioners applied a 1,000-volt jolt for 17 seconds. When the current stopped, witnesses realized Kemmler was still groaning and breathing. The technicians had to re-energize the generator and hit him with a massive 2,000-volt surge. The botched procedure cooked his body, filling the execution chamber with the smell of burning flesh. The public terror surrounding AC peaked shortly after, when a Western Union lineman was fatally shocked by an overhead wire in Manhattan. The resulting electric wire panic finally forced the city to mandate that all high-voltage lines be buried in underground conduits. The electric chair succeeded in killing Kemmler, but it failed to kill alternating current. It was corporate desperation masquerading as justice. The technical debate was settled by the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. The exposition required a massive temporary power grid to light its pavilions. Westinghouse aggressively underbid Edison's newly formed company, General Electric, by over $150,000. He took the contract at a loss to secure the public stage. On opening night, President Grover Cleveland stood before a crowd of thousands and pushed the activation button. Instantly, alternating current flowed through the massive fairgrounds, powering exactly 100,000 incandescent bulbs in a brilliant, steady glow. The illumination of the White City provided undeniable proof. Alternating current could distribute power safely, reliably, and cheaply on a massive scale. The victory secured the future of the power grid, but the protracted legal battles and underbidding had nearly bankrupted the Westinghouse Electric Company. To save the corporate entity that championed his infrastructure, Nikola Tesla tore up his royalty contract, walking away from millions to keep Westinghouse solvent. The ultimate victor of the current war was the financier who leveraged the chaos, J.P. Morgan. Morgan forced a hostile merger between Edison's holdings and the Thomson Houston Company. He stripped Thomas Edison of management control, dropped his name from the masthead, and formed General Electric. Despite the triumph of AC, direct current systems did not instantly vanish. The millions of dollars invested in DC urban infrastructure had to adapt. This schematic illustrates the resulting universal system, a technical compromise bridging the two grids. Engineers installed rotary converters at urban substations. These machines took the incoming high-voltage alternating current, stepped it down, and converted it directly into direct current. AC handled the extreme distances of the long-haul transmission lines, while the localized DC networks continued to supply heavy industrial loads, elevators, and streetcars. The modern grid operates as a hybrid. The physical limits of copper and energy loss forced a technological convergence, proving that infrastructure is ultimately governed by physics, regardless of corporate warfare.